I've known John Bishop for a long time. I'm sure if everybody's lived in Vancouver for many, many years, you'll know who Chef John Bishop is. He's had a very successful restaurant for many, many years called Bishop's on 4th Avenue in Kitsilano. And he is a chef. He's an author of many, many cookbooks. He works with many, many chef associations around the community. And I'm sure many, many of our chefs in all the restaurants around Vancouver have worked in his kitchen. Please join me in welcoming chef, author, John Bishop.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Danielle, too, for hosting us here tonight, and Richard for inviting me to come. How does that sound, Daniel? Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Yeah, not too loud? Or good. I'm going to stand to the right of this podium. I don't like podium. Where should I start? I'd start in the beginning, which was being encouraged by my mother when I was really disillusioned with school, unlike my brother and sister who seemed to do quite well with school. I came home every evening without any homework, and she was a single mom and questioned me as to why I didn't have any homework, and I must have come up with something, because I would be in the kitchen making food for my brother and sister, some ghastly preparations which I won't go into. But that's where I was gravitating to. And then when I was old enough to leave school, at just before my 15th birthday, in a small Welsh town, my mum asked me, as adults do, young people, you know, what are you going to do when you leave school? Well, I'd already had a butcher's delivery round on a bicycle and a newspaper round, and I was washing dishes in a local hotel, and I thought this small town didn't seem to hold much future for any young person, so I had sort of formulated this plan based upon a poster at the local railway station that said, "Join the army, see the world." And I'd heard that if you did 16 years in the army, you came out with a pension, and I, for some reason, that's why I never did well at math, I thought, I'm set for life if I can do that. My mother was absolutely horrified, and she said, "I don't want you to do that, because your grandfather did that. He came back with tattoos and a drinking habit." She'd be proud to know that I don't have any tattoos to this day. But, and she's still alive, she's 93, so part of the story was, when I went off to wash dishes, she had a sewing machine, and she made me this very cute, which I wished I had, a little blue check apron that she made for me to sort of go and wash pots. I got lost somewhere on the way. Anyway, she said to me, "No, I don't want you to go in the military. Look, there's a notice board here downtown in Wales, and it's advertising in a cooking school in North Wales, but you can't go there till you're 16. So I said, "School? I just left school." She said, "This is a cooking school. Let's go up and see." And to my complete surprise, with no school leaving stuff, Mr. Romani, who's the principal, said, "Yeah, there's a place for you here, but not until you're 16. So I went back home, continued to wash dishes, and when I was old enough, I went up to North Wales to this cooking school. Well, if my mother had lit some sort of food seed, planted some food seed in my mind, the school really set the whole thing afire, because there were all these other young people. We were all dressed in whites, we were given knives. You had nearly a whole day to make a pot of soup, and you started to learn these techniques about food, which is a whole, you know, in Wales, mashed potatoes would be a big deal. Cutting vegetables like a julienne or a brunoise or a paysan, making stocks. This was a whole art thing to me, and it's sort of where it grabbed me, being left-handed, a sort of arty type. Something about it grabbed me, and that's where this passion, which I have to this day, started. Really was the people that taught us the craft of cooking, the camaraderie with other people, an industry where, as my mother said, you'll always be in the warm, you'll always have something to eat. All those things sort of fell into place. I got a job in London when I was 18, and traveled as young people do, should recommend, get as many experiences as you can on the way. Ended up in Ireland, Southern Ireland, in a small fishing village that we relied on local food, seasonal food, tourism, and I stayed there for 9.5 years until one day a friend of mine came and said, "Look, you're in a real rut here," which I wasn't. I was living in the restaurant capital of Ireland, wonderful ingredients. I said, "Okay, well, I'm single, maybe I do need a challenge," so in those days you could get a work visa fairly easily. So within 3-4 months I was in Canada, originally to go to Toronto, but the job there fell through, so I flew to Vancouver, and that's where I came in 1973 to stay 1 year. And within a very short time, I met this wonderful woman from Saskatchewan, Teresa, who is now my wife, has been ever since 1975. Fell in love with the city. Fast forward, I worked for Umberto Menghi for 10 years. I say I gave him my best years, don't tell him I said that. So I learned, I got to know all sorts of people in the city, even though the kitchen wasn't an open kitchen. I was cooking in a little tiny space in the back, but I did see all the ups and downs of the economy. And then one day I fell out with, don't ever fall out with the accountant, and I found myself out on the street without a job. And I'm not a terribly aggressive kind of person, and I like Umberto, so it wasn't his fault particularly. So I went home, told him what had happened. He said, come back. I said, no, I can't. Come back. I said, okay. So I went back, took my big 61 Chrysler Saratoga down Hornby Street, pulled up out front, and I said to myself, I can't do this. I cannot do this. So I phoned Bud Sipko, who was my dentist at the time, and asked his advice. I said, what are you going to do? He said, what do you mean? You're going to open your own place? How the hell do we do that? You know, I thought about it as a chef every Sunday night if I was home. I'd say, why don't we do this and do that? But he said, no, we'll get the money. You just get the ideas and the concept and so on. And so there we were. We found a location on 4th Avenue, just prior to Expo. People said, you're mad, you should be downtown. But this is all we found. So, and then the menu, I'm not Italian, I couldn't do Welsh food. So I thought, well, you know, I met these farmers, and they said, we can plant according to our seed catalog, to the seasons. We can grow a menu for you if you want. And that's how it all started with Natty and Gary King, essentially. Thinking about local food and how enriching it is, as opposed to a system. I was telling George earlier, as a chef, in those days, you just got on the phone, you ordered everything from Yen Brothers, carrots, toilet tissue, tomatoes, didn't matter where, what, how. And that's how we were shopping until the light went on. And I grew up with a backyard garden. I grew up with farmland in sight. Where did I go wrong in the middle there in the 70s? So to just sort of go forward, here we are in 85 with people like Alice Waters in Berkeley, contacting cheesemakers and people like that. And so they were really, as Jonathan Waxman, he was really inspiration for me too, doing California cuisine based upon European principles. And so that's really, in short notice, I hope, Richard, I've gone over the time, really that's the nut of it all for me. Celebrating everything local, seasonal. You couldn't change your menu in the 70s, you'd lose half your clientele. Now you are much more adventurous. And if you look at our menu, generally you'll know what time of year it is, where you are exactly. It's the place, it's the time. Yeah, so thank you for listening to me.